Hi everyone, this is Alejandra. Today I want to show you one example in Power Query on how I used Divide-Integer this week. For example, here I have a file, loan file 1, which has two sheets and both have the same layout. They have only one column, and that column has information of my report. The first 5 lines have the titles of that report. The next 5 lines are the first line of the report, and so on. So we're going to use Power Query to transform this information from one column into a pivot table where we can have those columns presented properly, and also every time that I have a new file, I can add that to my folder and just refresh my pivot table from here or from data, refresh all, and all my information will update in seconds. If you like what you see here, remember to subscribe, and let's start. Okay, let me move this away and let me show you the files. Here I have a tab or a sheet that is called 100K 2 years. The next one is 50K 1 year. Same thing, one column, 5 lines is the titles, next 5 lines is the first line, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to close this loan file 1. I have loan file 2 and it has only one sheet, and it's called 150K 3 years. So we're going to use Divide-Integer to help us to transform this information, and we're also going to use Modulo. If you're not familiar with those terms, let me show you what they are. So here I have a quick example of a line where I have an index. This index line has consecutive numbers from 0 to 6, and it has just a one step change. Let's say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So in our case, we will add a column called index, and that column index will start from 0, and it will have as many numbers as the lines that I have in every single sheet. In our case, we will need kind of group of 5s, because I want to identify every single block of 5 lines. Those lines will belong to one line in my final report. So for that reason, my number of items will be 5. What happens when I divide my index by 5? My result is 0 when I divide 0 by 5. My result is 0.2 when I divide 1 divided by 5, and so on and so forth, right? So when I get to a number 6, when I divide my 6 by 5, I get an answer or a number of 1.2. What Divide-Integer does is it gives me the first digit before the dot. Let's say it gives me the 0 for all these items. It gives me the 1 for all the items that go after. It will give me the 2 for those that start 2 point something. So that's what Divide-Integer will give me. And that's why I selected number 5, because I want to keep the first 5 items in one group. Let's say it will be my group 0, this will be my group 1, and so on and so forth. Now, what Modulo does, Modulo is the remainder. Let's say here I have my full numbers, let's say, even though this is a 0. Here I have my number 1, but when I make a division, right, so when I divide the numbers, I have a remainder when I finish that calculation, right? So for example, let's say back in the day when I learned how to make divisions, I had a number 6 to be divided by 5, and my result was 6 divided by 5 is 1. 1 times 5 is 5. So my 6 minus that 5 that I got, it gives me a remainder of 1. That is what Modulo is bringing me. Let's have a couple of more examples. Hopefully it's a little bit more clear how this works. Same thing, I have a number 7, so I'm going to use that in here, number 7. And what happens is 7 divided by 5 is one time I can fit a number 5 in this 7, and I will have a remainder of 2. So I have 1 5 that fits here, but then it's 7 minus that 5, I have a remainder of 2. Same thing if I try with the number 11. My 11 divided by 5, I will have the chance to have 2 number 5s in the number 11, but I will have a remainder of 1. So that is what Modulo is bringing me on this specific column that I'm going to add. So saying that, hopefully this gave you a very general idea what Modulo and Divide-Integer will do for us. So let's go and open a new workbook. In this case is book 2. And I'm going to go to data, get data from file, from workbook. These are the two files that I just showed you. They are on my desktop, and my folder is called demo Divide-Integer. I'm going to select the first file. It doesn't matter. I just need one file to transform the data and then create a function so I can apply that function with those steps to my other files. But let's take one step at a time. So this is my first file. It has 2 sheets. I'm going to select the first sheet. It doesn't, as I said, it doesn't matter. I just need to tell Power Query what to do with that information. So I'm going to select that. I can right click and transform data. I can also click here on transform data. I'm using Microsoft 365. The Power Query editor will open, and this is the information that was in my Excel workbook. Excellent. Power Query created some steps for me, so I'm going to remove the last 2. I don't want to change the data type yet, and I don't want to promote the first line as headers, as this information is not correct just yet. So I want to demote that header and have it as first line. Perfect. I'm going to rename my query. I'm going to double click there, and I'm going to call it demo. Now I'm ready to transform my information. I'm going to go to add column, and I'm going to add an index column. This is just similar to the example that I just showed you. We have an index that starts in 0, and it goes on and until the end of the lines of each file. Now the next thing that we are going to do, we are going to add another column here in add column, and I'm going to go here where it says from number. I'm going to select standard. I'm going to click there, and I'm going to select Divide-Integer. Here it's going to ask me, enter a number by which to integer divide each value in the column. So I want to have number 5. And here you can see that all my first 5 lines have been identified with the number 0. Just as the example that I show you right over here, right? So this Divide-Integer brought me this 0, this number 1, and this number 2. Go back to my query. Now I have that information identified. I need to bring my modulo, right? I'm missing the last part of the example that I brought you. So I'm missing this specific part from modulo, all the remainders for all the calculations, right? So I'm gonna go back here to my query, and I'm gonna say, when I select the index column, I won't need it anymore. I don't want to add one more column. I already have this one here, so I'm going to work on top of this column. So here on transform, because I don't want to add a column, I just want to transform the existing one. I'm going to say transform, here number column, standard, and I'm going to call my modulo. I'll say modulo. And same thing, I need to enter the number from which to find the remainder for each value in the column, and that will be number 5. And now we have number 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can see that all the zeros refers to payment date. All of them are dates. So that means that all the information has been identified correctly. Let's say the total payment, it will be all the number 1s. All the numbers 2 will be the principal amount, number 3 will be the interest, and the number 4 will be the principal balance. You can see that the number is going down. Let's start transforming our data. I'm going to select, oh, by the way, let me change the title index for the title modulo. It's not index anymore. And let's say, let me select that column. I'm going to go to transform, and I'm going to say pivot column. I want to pivot the information that is in column 1, but something that is very important here is that you go to advanced options, click at the row, and select don't aggregate. We don't want any calculation there, we just want the lines as they are, and I'm going to say OK. Here you can see now how the information is organized properly, right? So I forgot to zoom in, but that helped me to realize that I have a line called totals. I don't want that. I'm going to click at this arrow, and I'm going to remove totals. I'm going to say OK. I don't want to have that. So I'm going to zoom in, Ctrl+Shift+, and then we are going to start changing some of this information. I don't need integer division anymore. I'm going to select that column. press and hold the control key, and I'm going to select this column called 4, and that is the principal balance. I don't want that information either, so I'm going to delete that. I just press delete with the column selected, and now I'm ready to promote the headers here, and I'm going to do it very easy in this part. I'm going to do it in the same step. So I'm here in the formula bar. If you don't have this, you can go to the view tab and click at the square or the box that you have here in the formula bar. Make sure that you have a check mark there. So I have my formula bar here. I'm going to give it some space, and I'm going to grab this on the table, promote headers. It's a very simple function here. I'm going to open parentheses. I'm going to go to the end of the other formula, and I'm going to close parentheses. I just need a table where I'm going to promote those headers, right? So the table is coming from this step. So I'm going to press enter, and now you can see that our headers have been promoted. I didn't need to create another step. So now the next step, we need to unpivot these columns. So I'm going to select the payment date column. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to select unpivot other columns. This will become my items. I'm just going to call it items. So, and the value will become my amount. I can keep this column selected, Control A to select the whole table. I go to transform, detect data type. And it seems like it detected everything correctly. Perfect. I'm ready to transform this into a function, because that function, what it's going to do is apply all these steps to all the files that are inside of my folder. Okay, I'm not too sure if the change type will apply correctly, but let's try. Let's try. Sometimes I have the feeling that it doesn't go at all. But anyway, don't remember exactly right now. So, but for now, we're gonna leave it. So I'm gonna go to demo, my demo query. I'm gonna right click, and I'm gonna duplicate. I'm gonna change the name of my query, and I'm gonna say that this is gonna be FX demo. And it really, this is not gonna make the change to a function, but for me it's a way to identify all the functions that I create. I have that consistency every time that I prepare any functions or I create functions. So here in my query, I'm gonna go to the view tab, and I'm gonna click at advanced editor. I'm gonna zoom in, Control Shift plus, and here I can see that this part, my directory, right, the directory where the file is coming, and the name of the sheet, that is the information that I need to change, because that is gonna be different every time that I have a different file, right? The file here and the name of the sheet. So to convert this to a function first, I'm gonna go press enter a few times. I'm gonna open, close parentheses. I'm gonna say equal, greater than. This is what is telling Power Query that this is a function. And here inside of my parentheses, I'm gonna provide my parameters. My parameters are gonna be my directory, because this is what I want to have instead of this, because this, as I said, this is gonna change. And now the other parameter will be my sheets. And that's, I'm gonna select that, Control C, and I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna select this where the name of my sheet is, the 100K 2 years. Select from the quotation marks to quotation marks, delete that. Make sure that you don't delete this comma. Make sure that you keep that comma. And now I'm gonna Control V to paste my parameter. Well, I'm gonna do the same with my directory. I'm gonna select the whole thing from quotation mark to quotation marks. I'm gonna delete that. And now I'm gonna copy my directory, Control C, and I'm gonna paste it there. You can type it as well, but make sure that you're typing exactly in the same way that you provide the parameters here. Excellent. I'm gonna say it's done. I'm gonna say OK. And here is my function ready to go. So you don't see any steps on the right side where it says apply the steps, but you can see it here on the formula bar. You can click at the rows, or you can expand a little bit. But it's hard to see it here. You can always go to View, Advanced Editor, go back and see the whole thing, right? Control Shift plus to zoom in, and Control Shift minus to zoom out. Excellent. The only thing that I noticed, I didn't rename my steps, so you make sure you are more organized than me, because it really helps later on when you need to go back and check what you did. I totally missed that. So everything seems to be working. I'm ready to call my files that are inside of my folder. So I'm going to right click here on the query section, new query, file, folder. This is the folder on my desktop where my files are. I'm going to say open. These are the two files, and I'm going to click at transform data. Perfect, this is what I need. These are the two files. I need the name of the files, and I also, here, I have the folder path. So select that column, press and hold the control key and select the name column. Right click and remove other columns. I'm keeping these two columns because they are going to give me the information that I need for my first parameter, that is my directory. So once I'm here, if you brought these columns in different order, make sure that you select folder path first, press and hold the control key and select name. By doing this, the order how you are going to merge these two columns will be correct. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to merge columns. I don't want to have any separator, and the name of my column will be my directory. I'm going to say OK. And this is the directory that I need for my function. I'm missing one parameter, right? So I need to provide the name of the sheet. So to get that information, I'm going to go to add column, custom column, and I'm going to, I really don't mind about this custom title for that column. I'm not going to keep it anyways. So I'm going to just say, bring the Excel workbook, this one, open parentheses, and I need to bring the content that is in that workbook. So it's file.content right here, that one. Open parentheses, and it's asking me for a path. The path is coming from my directory column on the right of this box. Double click at my directory, and I'm going to close the parentheses for the file contents, and I want to close the parentheses for the Excel workbooks, and I'm going to say OK. Now, if you click on the white space beside the table, you can see the content of those files. I can see the two sheets here, and I can see the kind is sheet. So I need to bring the name and the kind columns. So I'm going to go to my custom column, click at these two arrows to expand. I don't want to use the original column name as prefix, so I'll make sure I remove that check mark. And the columns that I want to bring is name and kind. I'm going to say OK. Here is the information that I need. I brought the kind because I want to right click here, text filters equals. So I want to make sure that every time that I have files and I have these sheets, I only bring the sheet, the kind sheet. Any other information, I don't want to bring it to my query. Okay, so now I can delete this column. My filter is already recognizing that in the kind needs to equal sheet. And what else do I have? Now I have the two items that I need for my function to work. So let's invoke our custom function. So here on the add column, I'm going to say invoke custom function. When I click there, and how this is going to be called, I'm not going to keep it. So custom is fine. The function query will be fxdemo, is the only function that we have, and my directory will come from my directory column. My sheet, that's going to come from a column, and the name of the column is name, and I'm going to say OK. Here you can see on the white side beside the table, now you can see the content of every single sheet. So perfect. The work is already done. All the steps that we apply to our file 1, sheet 1, let's say, all of that work has been applied to all the sheets and all the files. Excellent, I'm ready to expand this. I'm gonna go to the top of my column. I'm gonna click at these arrows, and I want to bring all the items. I'm gonna say OK. I don't need my directory column anymore. If you need to keep the name of the file, you can extract that information by selecting the column, go to transform, extract, and you can extract the information that is text between delimiters. In my case, I'm not going to keep it. I don't need it, so I'm going to delete it. So I'm going to select it and press delete. And now I have the name of my sheet. I have the date. I have the items. The items mean, let's say, total payment, principal amount, etc. And the amount. Perfect. So what I noticed is that the data type was not recognized. That's fine. Yeah, I wasn't sure. So I can easily just select one column, Control A to select the hot table, and I go to transform, the text data type, And now I have my data types identified correctly. That's fine. And I'm ready to pass this to Excel. I believe I remove all the totals. Yep, I'm ready to pass to Excel, this to Excel. So I go to the Home tab, close and load to. And I just want to create connection. I select only create connection, and that is because if I don't do that, all the queries as tabs in here, and I don't need that. I just want to bring the information that is coming from my last query. And before I do that, I'm gonna save this file. I'm gonna save it here on my desktop. I have a folder that's called solved, and I'm gonna say solved. Very original. So now I'm gonna right click to my query. I'm gonna say load to. And I want to bring a pivot table report on the existing worksheet, and I want B2. I'm gonna say okay. Now I can bring my items as rows, let's say. Actually, maybe I'm gonna bring that as columns. And then I want to bring the amount over here, the name of my loan. Perfect. I can also bring my payment dates here. Oh, I don't want to group this. Let me right click. Well, I can keep it grouped, or I can right click and I can say group, and there we go. I have all my dates split one by one. Let's go to design. I want to say report layout and show in tabular form. And perfect. Here we have our information well organized by payment date, the interest, the principal, the total payment. I don't want this grand total, and I can right click and remove grand total. I'm gonna right click or at any of these numbers inside, and I'm gonna say number format. Sorry, I want to use the decimal, the thousand separators, and remove the decimals. And here we have the information that we need. Here, let me minimize this a little bit. Let me right click, expand collapse. Let me collapse entire field. So you can see I have in here my three different loans, right? So what I want to bring is, actually, I don't need this grand total either. I'm gonna right click there and remove grand total. So I want to show you what happens when I bring new files to my folder. So let me go back here where I have my folder, right here on my desktop. And I bring a new file that is called loan file 3. I'm gonna double click there so I can show you the content of that file. And that has two sheets, that is 250K 4 years and 120K 2 years. Excellent. So I'm gonna close that. I'm gonna right click to my pivot table, or I can go to data, refresh all. And here we have the other two loans. In no time, the 250, the 120, 4 years and 2 years. No time. This information was updated just by right clicking and select refresh, or go to data and refresh all. No time. So I hope you found this information useful. If you like it, please give the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, share with anybody that you believe can benefit from it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.